I do not disagree with his argument. The appropriate response to a transphobic statement is delete it and move on. Now, I will grant that's in a very internet setting. You know, when it's in person, that's a slightly different situation. Now, as a matter of fact, that leads in very nicely with one of the first things that I wanted to talk about today. Throughout this month, I have been doing various videos on inclusion in the LGBTQ community that isn't just, you know, skinny white boys, cis up on floats, dancing around to disco music. You know, I've been talking about intercultural discussions, identities in Hawaii, in China, in Central America. Well, there is another issue that I think doesn't get nearly as much attention as it should, which is accessibility in the queer community. For example, deaf and hard of hearing individuals. And so for today, I wanted to open up by spotlighting a group of queer creators who are on YouTube, and I think there's also a couple of them who are on Twitch, who are specifically doing work in the deaf and hard of hearing communities in order to raise awareness of the specific issues that they confront, but also because due to this accessibility limitation, there's not a lot of resources available for the populations that they're speaking to. So I wanted to first show a video that I found that was several of them talking, and then I wanted to go to one of the personal accounts, well, not like private accounts, but one of the YouTube accounts of one of the individuals in particular who's in the video with the group. So hold on just a second, let me push some buttons, and we will head on over there. Broink. Now, all of these individuals are deaf, and so they will be signing throughout the presentation. There are captions at the bottom of the screen that will indicate what they are saying. These have been translated into direct English, so it's not translated from ASL. So it should be pretty easy for all of you to follow. If you have any trouble, then please let me know, and I will do my best to accommodate. But otherwise, here we go. I figure at least a few of you watching that can find some similarities in your own experience. Of course, the opportunity that's afforded to those of us who are hearing is that we can discuss them. One of the things that has been a real boost, you'll notice that all of them touched on the fact that social media has been a real benefit to them identifying aspects of their own identity, because if you're looking right here in the chat right now, it's mostly a typed medium. So they have the opportunity to finally talk, even if they're not necessarily paying attention to what the person on screen is saying, because maybe they don't have their captions turned on or whatever. They can still have a chance to interact with people and chat and discover from there. So I did want to touch on the fact that you'll notice the other participants said when Blake talked about experiences, that's when I knew. So I wanted to specifically go to Blake's page so that you can see Blake. It's Blake Cully. Blake actually did a series of videos that I believe was titled My Journal, but each of them is like, so journal entry number 1, journal entry number 2, and it is literally their journey going through identifying themselves as trans, but also I think there's some discussion of HRT, which for many of you who've ever had to deal with even medical professionals, they're not particularly well versed on HRT. So imagine how many resources are available to people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So that video series was actually eye-opening for a lot of people in the deaf community. So I wanted you to get a taste of what it looks like. And I realized that nonstop reading might be a little difficult for some of you, and this one's only about 4 minutes long, and then we'll go on. There you go. And let's be honest, it doesn't hurt that Blake is pretty on the eyes. So, you know, it's not hard to watch. But in any case, you'll notice, or at least for those of you who are even kind of familiar with sign language, you'll notice Blake had to finger spell almost everything from AFAB to cisgender to trans. All of those terms don't really exist in ASL. And so even having to spell all of those things out gives you an indication of how uncommon it is to have these sorts of conversations. So when several other deaf people are referring to Blake and saying, oh my God, I saw Blake's videos and that's when I figured it out. That's what we mean about getting the word out and providing these opportunities for as many people as possible, and also highlighting just how much of an issue things like accessibility are in the queer community, even right now. So even with the explosion of social media, that video was only made in 2019. So it's only been 2 years ago. And there's already a whole group of deaf people saying, oh, I am so grateful that Blake made these videos. I don't remember the non-binary person from the video. Let me check. I closed the window because I'm a fool. Hold on just a second. Let's open that back up there. And we'll see the names. Okay, we got Renica Dunn. I believe it was Blake Cully with longer hair. Yeah, because Z was the younger one, and I'm pretty sure Blake was the older one with glasses. Yep, it was Blake. And, I mean, let's be honest, the nose piercing has only helped. NBs be hot, yo. But, like I say, I wanted to call attention to another aspect of the community that tends to not get discussed very much when we talk about things like Pride Month. You know, even when we discuss Stonewall, here's something funny that it really stands out to me that we will talk about Stonewall, and we will even talk about the fact that drag queens and trans women were involved in the Stonewall fight, but Stonewall Inn was fairly famous for a lot of teenage hustlers hanging out at the bar. It was a drag bar and hustler bar. That's why the police broke it up so regularly. So why is it that we don't talk about sex work when we talk about Pride Month? These are the sorts of invisible conversations that I'm trying to spotlight as much as I can, you know. I mean, I'm only one guy, but I wanted to at least call attention to this population within our own LGBTQ moniker, because there's one or two people who are doing these videos and it's transforming hundreds of lives just by getting the vocabulary out there in a way that it normally doesn't get presented. So I wanted to start with that because I wanted to, in my own way, help to boost their signal a little bit. And speaking of boosting signals, I want to just throw this out here. What is this music for twos?
Alors, comment je vais écrire ça? La manière dont l'attaque-range marche n'est
Conker's Bad Fur Day. Oh, Lord. That was a whole lot right there. Hey, Big Ben, thank you for the subscription. Ben, you stream, don't you? I feel like you do. I love the game noises. This is half of my entertainment, is just the clips it
Did y'all
plays.
just see that Goomba fly? Am I the only one who saw the Goomba fly?
Well, Amorous, it isn't really, it's not as much top down as you might suspect. ASL is a pretty adaptable language as far as like common vocabulary terms getting introduced. For example, this actually happened fairly recently, and I'm putting recently in air quotes because it's recently for a linguist, but you know, not like within the last 5 minutes. But in the late 90s into the early 2000s, a sign language just sort of appeared in Panama. It was a combination of a couple of Creole dialects that had come over from Africa, as well as a few that existed in Central America already, and it just sort of emerged as a fully formed language. Thank you very much for the subscription, Kez. Resubscribe for 2 months. You are so sweet. Be gay, do subbies. Yes. Be gay, do crime. In Roblox. Actually, don't do it in Roblox. Roblox is a terrible game. The optimization on that is just horrific. I mean, Minecraft is fine. Just do it in Minecraft. It's fine. But anyway, so when it comes to signs being introduced into the language of ASL, I mean, there are somewhat formal dictionaries of ASL, but for the most part, as long as a term becomes commonly available or it just becomes regularly used, especially when it comes to things like loan signs, which are when they fingerspell so quickly that it becomes almost an abbreviation. Loan signs get introduced constantly. So it wouldn't surprise me if in the next few years, terms like cisgender start to become loan signs and eventually develop their own hand gesture of some sort. But it's not out there now because it's a small enough sector of the population, and it's a conversation that's not happening sufficiently for it to really be commonly used. It's the same as any language. Someone creates a word and people pick it up if they find its meaning adequate to express what they want to say. That is true, although slang terms tend to be easier in sign language because it's so positional. So, like, the sign for triangle can also sort of be the sign for vagina, depending on where you hold your hands, that kind of thing. So you can be a little sneaky with some of the words that you use, but that's, you know, the ways that slang terms evolve in different languages is unique to that language anyway, so it's not like it's new. But I would be interested, I'm kind of curious to see what terms like cisgender turn into in like the next decade. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me there aren't. I've seen a few signs for trans, and I don't know, for those of you who were watching the video closely, I don't know if you noticed, but Blake and the other person they were interviewing, because I think the third contributor just wrote in, which is cool. I mean, not everybody's available every time, but they actually used 2 different signs for trans, and Blake used a third sign in the journal video. And it was kind of this combination of the word for changing or transformation, and then a couple of times they fingerspelled it as an abbreviation. So even depending on how the sentence is constructed, sometimes they'll use 2 different words, which means basically the vocabulary hasn't been solidified yet. Oh, yes, on the ASL front, if any of you are aware of any specific resources for ASL, I tend to recommend in most cities, especially larger metropolitan areas, there is usually a deaf like social group that gets together. They frequently have Facebook. I know there's one where I am. There's at least a couple of them up in the capital city, and then there's a few more in like Oklahoma City. So I tend to recommend that. But there is, hold on a second, let me go get it. I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. I came back very quickly. Sorry about that. I couldn't remember the name of the actual set that I have, but I got a set of ASL flashcards that has been by far the best introduction to sign language that I have ever had. And it's by Barron's. So let me see if I can find it on, like, Amazon. Haha. Oh, look, they do have it. They got them at Walmart for like 25 bucks. Nice. But anyway, let me load a graphic here for you so that you can see what they look like. And I'll put it up on screen real fast. That it comes in a box, and it's just 500 basic vocabulary flashcards. And really, with that introduction, you can actually carry on a fairly good conversation. And I had a friend who's, you know, without sharing too much information, I had a friend who had a family member that had nonverbal issues from time to time. And actually, these flashcards came in really handy because it gave them the opportunity to learn a few signs that they could do really easily when they were in a nonverbal state. The pinky red? What conversation are we having here? Are you people talking about hair color? You are, aren't you? I know that language. Maybe. Whatever. Don't lie to me. But anyway, that as a starter set is by far one of the best kits that I have ever seen. There are some books out there that will teach you, and this is a really important thing to pay attention to. There is a big difference between what is called ASL, or American Sign Language, and C, which is Signed Exact English. Signed Exact English is you are actually signing precisely the words that you would say if you were speaking a sentence out loud. That and ASL frequently exist simultaneously. They have a lot of signs in common. Some deaf people were raised speaking C. Some deaf people were raised speaking ASL. There's even a third that's quite common called cued speech, which a lot of interpreters don't even know. It's kind of rare, but there are several deaf people who were raised speaking it, which is a combination of lip movements and hand gestures that show the position of the throat and tongue. It's really interesting to watch someone signing it, but there are some deaf people who didn't ever learn a sign language. They tended to learn to lip read. And so they're considered mostly, it's actually called oral teaching, and they don't know any sign at all. So if you approach them and start signing, they will tell you out loud, oh, I don't speak sign language. So the reason that I tend to suggest things like this set of flashcards is because it has overlap between both C and ASL, and it's really common vocabulary. So it's the stuff that you're going to use most often, like, you know, hair, face, name, that kind of thing. Whereas if you're getting some of the, especially the textbooks and the training manuals, they get really involved, really detailed, really quickly, and you can go down a pretty deep rabbit hole before they actually tell you, oh, by the way, the language you're learning right now is C, so it's only useful about half the time. What up, cat?
I went it countered instead
How the fuck? Come! The fuck! I hit him.
That's why you shouldn't play with revolvers.
I didn't do that with the revolver. Click.
No, me. I did it.
Bang, see?
Really? Really? Cat, what the hell was that? Hey, Gemma, how you doing? And, of course, I think it's important to point out, there is always just going to Blake's website and learning sign by watching the captions and seeing the hand movements and going from there, because, you know, then you're actually seeing someone who's using the sign language in real time and in a very conversational way. So there's always that as an option as well. And you can slow down YouTube so that you can see each hand movement as it develops. And for the most part, the captions actually follow along pretty closely with what they were saying. Granted, ASL tends to not have as many, like, articles, so not as many times will they say a or the, because that tends to be implied by the sign itself. Frequently, they won't sign words like with or on, because that's indicated by the position of the hands. So you have to kind of get used to not looking for that. But the keywords, the verbs, the nouns, that sort of thing, where they go in the sentence, those are going to be consistent. But, as an aside for going into ASL, I just wanted to make sure that as we round the corner to coming up on the end of Pride Month, at least for my streaming schedule, that I highlighted another community that I think does not get as much attention as they really should when we talk about Pride Month. Did any of you have any questions? Any other, did you need any links? Any thoughts? How we all doing? Because if you didn't have anything else you wanted to go for, then I'm going to transition into Neofeud. I think we're coming up on the last leg of it. What, learning sign language? Kat, are you talking about just learning sign language? I actually found it really easy. By the way, I don't... Am I low? I can fix that. And I'm certainly not trying to brag or anything. I just, I took some ASL classes when I was in college, and I picked it up faster than I picked up any of the spoken languages that I attempted. Way faster than French. Spanish, meh. Russian, I did not do well. But sign language, I seem to make almost intuitive sense. I wonder if there's a video game that teaches it. That would be interesting. Like, just slowly build up points. I don't know. And of course, it is also worth pointing out, American Sign Language, it is very specifically American Sign Language, because British Sign Language is virtually unrelated. It has a different way of indicating letters and numbers, and most of the vocabulary is distinct as well. And then there's French Sign Language, and I think there's German as well. I'm trying to remember if there's Italian. I think there is. You showed a bunch of ex-military dudes a Thought Slime video and got a good reception. Wow. So are you going to take them to Vet's channel next, or what are we talking here? Slowly converting them? I must know more. Oh no, Kat. That's intentional. One thing that I love about the little clip generator, because it's actually it's an easy program to load. I can just never remember the website for it. I'll bug Momo and then I'll just stick it in my Discord. But apparently it randomly pulls clips, but it's predominantly based on time. So the older the clip, the more preference it gives it. And frequently we will have people say, oh my God, I haven't even played that game in 2 years. There it is. Yeah. Twitch Guru. Thank you, Chair. But yeah, you go to that website, you type in, I believe it's your account number, name, whatever. and then you load it in as part of your either Streamlabs or OBS or whatever it is that you use. You just load it in as one of your visible loaded screens, kind of like the chat scroll and the follow alerts and all that. You just put it in the same spot. Well, don't put it in the same spot because then it overlaps, but individual files with transparent. Look at you. See, this is why we need more graphic designers in the community. Because I don't know if y'all have noticed, but leftist art, I see some stuff that gets posted on like Twitter and stuff, like alerts that are coming up, and I'm like, this too much. Pare it down, y'all. Simpler is better. Scuffed, indeed. Well, you know, I mean, it kind of feeds into that whole the left can't meme thing. It's like, if I really wanted to read a book, I'd just read a book. Okay, Zombie, when you say speculative zoology, that is a broad freaking topic. Are you talking like cryptids or like everything will eventually turn into crabs? What are we talking about? Do I look like I know what a JPEG is? JPEG, that's that YouTuber guy that does this sarcastic videos about how all political alignments are meaningless. That right? I know that guy. Yeah. But see, I'm funny. I'm hip with the kids. I'm hilarious. Don't judge me.